compare decimals. The first thing we want to do when we compare decimals is to line up the decimal points. Been talking about that the last couple lessons. Let's put this in our math notebook. Line up the decimal points. So we draw the decimal points before we do the work. That way everything stays in order. Line up the decimal points. With that in our head, let's take a look at a couple problems. The first one we have 0 and 26 hundredths and 0 and 23 hundredths. Now when you read them aloud, it should be pretty evident that 0 and 26 hundredths is larger than 0 and 23 hundredths. However, we are going to work through the paper end of this because we're going to get more difficult comparison problems down the road, and it would be good to have the method in place. So we line up the decimal points. So off to the side, I'm going to draw 2 decimal points. I'm going to write our numbers in order and keep all the place values in order. And now, how do I compare? I start from the left. These are both zeros, so I cannot tell which number is larger based on that. I move over. We have the decimal points. I can't tell which is larger based on that. I go to the tenths. They're both 2, so I can't tell which one's larger on that. Now I'm out to the hundredths. I have 6 hundredths or 3 hundredths. Which one's larger? Obviously the 6. So we want to have the greater than sign. Remember back to first grade, the alligator always eats the larger number. So 0 and 26 hundredths is larger than 0 and 23 hundredths. Let's take a look at the second one. 1 and 15 hundredths and 1 and 3 tenths. Now, a lot of boys and girls take a look at this problem. They say, well, 1 and 15 is going to be larger than 1 and 3. Let's see if that's true. We line up our decimal points. We write our decimals around that. Make sure everything is lined up. And let's have a look. We start at the ones. They both have a 1 in the ones place, so I can't tell which is larger. Can't tell off of the decimal point. Now I'm at the tenths. So I have 1 tenth and 3 tenths. Which is larger? The 3 tenths is. That's right. So the alligator eats the larger number. 1 and 15 hundredths is less than 1 and 3 tenths. And the way we could think about this is, remember I said you can always add zeros to the right. So 1 and 3 tenths is still the same thing as 1 and 30 hundredths. So now we have 1 and 15 hundredths, 1 and 30 hundredths. Obviously 1 and 30 hundredths would be larger there. So that's another way of thinking about that. What about the last one? 0 and 15 hundredths or 1 tenth? Well, several lessons ago we learned that 1 tenth is a decimal would be 0 and 1 tenth. So let's line up our decimal points. We have 0 and 15 hundredths, and then we have 0 and 1 tenth. How do we compare? We take a look at the ones place. They're both zeros. I can't tell the difference. Take a look at the decimals. They're both there. Take a look at the tenths place. They're both ones. Still can't tell the difference. Now I'm out to the hundredths. I have a 5 and I have nothing. Well, 5s are larger than nothing. So 15 hundredths would be larger than 1 tenth. And again, I could draw in the 0 here to make it 10 hundredths. It doesn't change the value. Now I have 5 is larger than 0. It's still the same fact. So 0 and 15 hundredths is greater than 1 tenth. We always want to remember to line up our decimals when we compare decimals. And that's how we compare decimals in 4th grade.